All right, the Krug Show meets the Cohn Zone. Hope everybody's doing great. It's Monday, April 1st. This is not an April Fool's joke. This is an actual 49er-based live stream. I hope everybody's having a great day, and we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check out Pig and a Pickle,
Good
two
barbecue.
locations, Emeryville, Corte Madera. They're great. Marin Autoglass, marinautoglass.com. My man Saeed does a fantastic job. Sadly, in the city, you're getting your windshields bashed out at a record rate, but Saeed can make it easy for you. It's a one-stop shop. You call him, you tell him your VIN number, he brings your windshield out, he pops the old one out, the new one in, glazes away the new one, cleans up all the glass, and you're off and running, and no worse for wear. So Marin Autoglass, definitely a great sponsor. As well as Sharp Corners. That's right, Sharp Corners, sports collectibles. If you're a sports cards and collectibles fan, check out Sharp Corners in Pacific Grove. Call Anthony Catania, 831-521-5264. What's going on, Grant? How are you, man?
I never thought of the genius of having a Bay Area sports YouTube channel sponsored by an auto glass company. It makes so much sense. I mean, people here need to know a good auto glass. They need someone they trust, someone they can call about 5 to 7 times a year, because that's just the way it is out here. Sorry.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what the best part about it is? They come to you. So, like,
That's
let's
nice.
say you're parking, hey, I work downtown and I park at this garage. You just tell them where you're parked and you give them the VIN number. And while you're working, they will come out, pop out the windshield. Maybe you want to meet them at lunchtime. They'll pop out the windshield, pop in the correct windshield with the correct VIN number, sweep away all the glass. Yeah. And it's like one of those things that it's like, oh, I can't believe it happened. But then it's like, what? Of course.
An hour later, it's fixed.
And you're down the road. And
there you go.
Saeed's a great guy. So thanks, Saeed, for sponsoring the show. Man, you're dressed up, man. What do you got? You got a hot date? You got a dinner arrangement?
You, Larry.
You always.
I want to bring my A game
up
for the Krug Show. Are you kidding? This is. Now I'm wearing shorts underneath, but up top, I'm all business.
Wow. So you went to Orlando. How was it in Orlando?
Have you been to Orlando?
Owners meetings. I've never gone to Orlando. I've been to Florida. I've been to Tampa. I've been to Miami. I've never been to Orlando.
I tried so hard not to look down my nose at Orlando. I mean, I'm from the Bay Area. We're very pretentious out here. It's Central Florida. They don't put on airs out there. But every time I got an Uber and I mentioned I was from the Bay, whoever the driver was like, oh, it's such a shame what's going on out there. It's like, what are you talking about? You don't live out here. You live in Orlando. So anyway, It was fine. They don't have beaches out there. They have lakes and they have Disney World and they have the NFL. So it was interesting. Look, the reception was something like I've never, ever, ever seen. It almost felt like an Illuminati meeting. It's like all these famous people in one place pretending to be normal. And I'm supposed to like not be a journalist right now. And I'm just supposed to schmooze. It was very, very, very weird. Like Vince Carter was there. It's like,
now you did mention though you went to a cocktail party with some of the coaches.
That's what I'm saying.
Was that? I mean, what'd you think of it?
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, it was hundreds of people, a lot of coaches, a lot like Howie Roseman was there, Jed was there. I mean, all of the richest people in the NFL were there, and some other celebrities, and me. And I had like a stain on my shirt. I felt stupid and self-conscious. So I did what I did when I was a freshman at UCLA when I went to a party that I didn't really know anyone. I just walked in circles around the perimeter. So many laps, Larry. I felt like an idiot, like an 18-year-old kid with no friends. But then I found Robert Saleh, who I know, and thankfully he talked to me for like 20 minutes. And that was the highlight of my night. I was looking for Kyle. I couldn't find him. He ducked it. I think he ducked it. I think he went out with his buddies, McVay and LaFleur.
Now, why though? There's a number of events throughout the year that you could fly to, you could not fly to, and you choose to not fly to some and to fly to others. What makes the Orlando owners meeting something that Grant Cohn would say, you know what? I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to get on the bird. I'm going to rent the hotel. I'm going to get the hotel and, rental and the whole deal. And I'm going to go for it. Why?
That's a good question.
What happens there at the owners meetings that makes you say, you know what? I got to be there.
Well, those 2 interviews are key. John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan. It's the first time you get to talk to him after free agency. So there's a lot of fertile ground there for interviews, and you get to talk to Jed York. And I got some pretty good stuff out of Jed York about changed his tune about, anyway. The other thing is this reception, though. The whole idea is you get some time to socialize and drink with Kyle Shanahan. I've never done that. And me and Kyle, we don't have a bad relationship, but it's kind of contentious and it's very much a business relationship. And I've known him for like 8 years. And I was thinking it'd be kind of cool to like take a shot with Kyle and not talk about football. But he didn't go. So I was kind of disappointed. But I did see Robert Saleh. That was pretty cool. I saw John Lynch and a bunch of other coaches. But come on, Kyle. I was there for you.
But no shots with Lynch.
No shots with Lynch. Lynch was buttoned up. He was hanging out with Jed, the owner, his boss. I didn't see anyone taking shots. Saleh doesn't drink. I had like a Stella.
You didn't run the steps with Saleh of a nearby stadium or anything?
I was doing what Bruce Wayne would do, kind of pretending to drink because you're trying to keep your wits about you in case Kyle Shanahan comes out and you have to fight crime. No, I'm not Batman, but you know what I'm saying? You have to, but he didn't show. I'm still salty about it. I went all the way to Central Florida, changed planes. No Kyle. Come on.
If at the end of one of these seasons, Kyle said, "Hey, Grant, we're going to be in Cabo on these dates. Will you join the clique?" What do you say?
In a heartbeat. All I've ever wanted was to be your friend. No, I'm just kidding. I'd go to Cabo. I don't think he's going to invite me. Something tells me.
Something tells you, yeah.
Something tells me.
You do stymie him with some good questions.
Can I tell you what the PR director called and told me? I've told this before, but this is so good. I got a call like 10 o'clock in the morning before the reception, which is at like 7. And the PR director is like, "Hey man, need you to be on your best behavior this week." I was like, what do you mean? I'm always on my best behavior. He's like, no. Like, I mean it. You need to relax. This reception is a non-working event. I was like, what? I'm a very relaxed person. Like, so I don't know. Maybe Kyle Shanahan was nervous that I was going to be like, "Well, what happened in the Super Bowl, man?" Like, what? Nah.
So, how do you feel about the fact that your presence alone makes Corey Rush nervous?
I think it's funny because it just means he doesn't know me that well. Like he's been the PR director for about 3-4 years. We have a business relationship, but if he really thought I was going to press Kyle at this, he doesn't know me that well.
Yeah.
Anyway, I still think Kyle didn't show up because he didn't want to see me. He was like, "You know what? I'm just going to go hang out with Sean McVay. Fine. I'm going to hang out with Matt LaFleur." Like, fine, dude.
It is amazing though when the PR staff, you can tell if you're there every day like we are, you can tell when the PR staff is nervous. And it could be a random player. It could be a player that they just don't know what he's going to say. It could be a player, it could be a coach. It could be the assistant coach time period. I mean, when we were talking to assistant coaches at one time this summer, it was like looking at my watch. How many more minutes do we have to subject our assistant coaches to this?
See, very nervous. It's a nervous group. In the comment section. Last year, I went to this in Arizona. And I didn't go to the reception because I didn't know that it was something people went to and Kyle was there. And apparently he was drinking with the beat writers and I missed it. And I was like, okay, next year I'm definitely going to this because I don't want Kyle to think that I'm ducking him, that I'm afraid of him because I'm not. I don't have a problem with Kyle. I don't like personally dislike Kyle. I'm sure he's a really fun guy to drink with. I don't know. So I went, I got big time. Oh, well. Next time I'm not going to tell Corey that I'm there. I'm just going to show up. Because I think what might have happened was Corey told Kyle, "Hey, Grant's there," and he's like, "I'm not showing up."
I'd like to interview Kyle around his house. Have you seen the IG footage of his $12 million mansion?
No. What is it in like Los Gatos?
I saw it, I think, on Instagram. Man, it's awesome. I mean, I don't know where exactly he lives, but it's $12 million and it's monster. And it's just like a vineyard and a this and a that and
horses, ponies.
I'm not sure horses, but there's a vineyard. And I've never had a vineyard. He's got a vineyard.
Wow. Does he make wine?
I don't know. Seems like everybody makes wine these days.
That's cool. I was going to make a joke about him choking in the Super Bowl, but I couldn't quite connect it to him making wine. But that's where I was trying to go. Anyway,
that's where you were headed.
Yeah.
I entitled this stream, Will the 49ers overperform their win total? I just saw this came out today. The 49ers over under for this year is 11.5. You said the over is plus what, 415?
Hold on, let me get that for you. The over is plus 115 and the under
plus
is minus 145.
Under's minus 145. So the under is favored on the 11.5. We know who they're going to play. We just don't know the schedule. The schedule comes out in May. The Niners, of course, play their division home and road. And then at home, they play Bears, Lions, which could be really tough, Jets, Patriots, Chiefs, which could be really tough, and Cowboys. So they're
Jets could be tough if Aaron Rodgers is on the field. Who knows?
True. That's true.
Yeah.
Jets could
they
be
won
tough.
7 games without Aaron Rodgers.
And then on the road, they play the division, and they've kind of owned the division. But then they play at Lambeau. They play in Minnesota, which is a tough place to play. They lost there this year. They play in Miami, which if it's the first 2 or 3 weeks of the year is almost a for sure loss. I mean, the humidity in South Florida in the first couple of weeks of the year is just road teams hardly ever win. And then Buffalo, who knows if that's in December, that could be a nightmare. And then Tampa, which if it's in December, it's awesome. But once again, if it's in week 1 or week 2, it's guys are cramping up and it's going to be a very difficult game to win. What do you say? Do you go over or under the 11.5 based on, before we even know the month, the actual schedule? We just know the opponents.
Well, yeah, first reaction is that's a tough schedule. But to bet the under here be kind of tough. Like if it were Jimmy Garoppolo, I'd feel confident. But with Brock, are you really thinking if he plays 17 games that he's going to only win 10 of them? I mean, that's not really been what he's done. Hasn't really been his pattern in the regular season. He's been 17-4. Is that right?
Yeah. He wins a lot. He's won a lot.
He wins a lot. So look, if you're betting the under, I think you're betting that he's going to miss time, which is fair. Quarterbacks miss time all the time. And has Kyle ever kept a starting quarterback healthy for 2 seasons in a row? Ever?
Not that I can remember.
I don't know that he has. And it's not like the offensive line's gotten any better. So I think the under is actually kind of a fair bet here, considering the Niners had really good injury luck last year. And the thing I just mentioned about keeping quarterbacks healthy. Yeah.
Under. Yeah, I'm going under. Here's my thing. I'm going 7-2 in the 9 at home. Okay. I think they'll beat everybody except for Chiefs and Lions, let's say. Okay, so that's 7-2 at home. They'll win one. They'll lose one game in the division for sure, probably on the road. So, now that's 3 losses. And then to me, all the places they're going to play are tough places to play. I mean, all the road games, like it's tough to win at Lambeau. It's tough to win in Minnesota. It's tough to win in Miami. It's tough to win in Buffalo, especially late in the year. So, So I've got 3 losses going into those, and then there's 5 games there. I think they lose at least 3. So that's 6. Yeah, that's under. That's under.
And it does kind of feel that what I've had the title for my stream is, will the Niners have a Super Bowl hangover? And it seems like this is what a Super Bowl hangover looks like. Last year, they were so galvanized by how they lost the NFC Championship game. It wasn't fair. We didn't get a chance. And they came out so hot to start the season. But this year, it's like, oh, it hurts so much. I mean, there's really no excuse you can make. You can't say anything. You just didn't know the rule, or you had it and you lost it. And I don't know. I feel like there's kind of a dark cloud hanging over this team right now. Like, you haven't resolved things with Brandon Ayuk. Is he going to hold out? Is this going to stretch into training camp? He's your best player on offense, or he's the one guy who's improving of the weapons. So it just feels like this could be a year where they take a step back. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a real step back, but I just think that they're slightly under the over, the over-under total. Like a step back to me would be like if they went, they won 8 games, they went 8-9 or something. I don't think they're going to go 8-9. I think they're going to go like, like 11-6
11-6.
or 10-7. You know,
Okay.
10-7. I think
That's
10
a half
and 7.
step back,
It's a
three-quarter step
little
back.
it's a little bit. I mean, they may step back in record, but you know, I think it's going to be a similar looking team to a year ago. We'll see. I mean, it's that one's kind of a little bit of a, you know,
I
there's a
mean,
lot
their
that has
issue
to
was
happen.
stopping the run, right? It almost cost them the NFC Championship game. They just got gouged. Have they improved that? I mean, when Greenlaw comes back, it'll be pretty good. But Devondre Campbell, I mean, the Packers gave up like 2,100 rushing yards last year. Malik Collins isn't that big. Leonard Floyd is a pass rusher. I'm curious to see what's up with that. They've done so many things to change the defense, but that issue is still there.
Well, and you know, it's like there's lots of debate over how it's solved. I mean, I think they really missed Emmanuel Mosley, and you know, 2 years ago Tart, last year Ward. I think that, you know, that they're going to have to draft some DBs who are hitters. It's, you know, it was a group effort, you know, once upon a time, and then the last year it was like, well, Greenlaw and Warner, you know, if those guys don't stop the run, it's like, oh, they're screwed. They need it to be a group effort again. They absolutely need their secondary players to step into the lane and start somebody, you know, from time to time. And Lenore was really good against the run last year at times, but man, Gibson, no, and they just, you know, it seemed like their corners for the most part, no, they didn't participate in the run, and their D line, it just didn't. They didn't have anybody. Chase Young never really set the edge. You know what I mean? So it's like I just kind of wonder. They lost 5 or 6 guys that were all good run defenders. If they're gonna get better at the run, they're gonna have to get 5 or 6 guys who are good run defenders. So that's,
you could argue that they would have maybe won that Super Bowl against the Chiefs a couple months ago if Dre Greenlaw hadn't popped his Achilles.
Oh,
Because when he went down, Oren Burks got torched in coverage. And that was a big difference in the game. Campbell's supposed to be better in coverage than Burks. But this is like losing Greenlaw is a big one. Now he might be back week 1. He could be back week 1.
If he's back week 1, I mean, seriously, we need to talk about medical advancements. I mean, we need to do a show on. I mean, come on.
It's more
the guy
likely
tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl.
The same player he was when he comes back. That's more likely. And so we're going to talk later about what they need to add. But to me, linebacker is still a gigantic need.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you can get a great one, because we don't know anything about Winters or Graham other than they kind of struggled at times stopping the run the preseason last year. They look good at times, but we don't know. I mean, it's just, we don't know about those guys. That was the one thing I was hoping that we would know, you know, is like what they were going to be able to contribute. There's a story out today about Brock Purdy and Deommodore Lenoir earning performance-based bonuses. Purdy and Lenoir have received performance-based bonuses from the NFL for their contributions during last season, both ranked among the top 25 based in pay distributions, in performance-based pay distributions. So Purdy earned $739 extra, which is almost double his salary. Lenoir received $790 extra. It's a fund that's created, that's used as a supplemental form of player compensation, probably invented by the Players Union. And it's paid out on a comparison of playing time to salary. So guys who dramatically overplay their pay will get some some compensation here. And Purdy obviously did. He threw for over 4,000 yards. Lenoir obviously did as well. He had a career high 84 tackles. He 3 picks, 10 passes defensed. There's not a ton to talk about on this topic other than both these guys are probably offensively and defensively the guys who have surprised the most. If you said the last couple of years, it's like Lenoir to me is a total surprise that he's this good, this physical, this good inside, outside. And obviously we all have to be, you know, I talked up Purdy, but come on, I didn't see this kid being this. He's much better than I ever thought he would be. But what do you think? Those guys, I kind of like this little thing that the NFL has. I don't know what the impact is on the cap, but at least it funnels the players that are really good early some extra ducats.
Yeah, I like that. It's good. But what I want to say here is more about Lenoir. Purdy not eligible for an extension yet, which I think is stupid. The NFL needs to change that. But Lenore is. Lenore was eligible for an extension last year. He just put together a really good year. He wasn't a Pro Bowler. He wasn't all pro, but his numbers were elite. He gave up a quarterback rating of 75. He had 3 picks, gave up 1 touchdown. I mean, he was really good. And he was played inside, outside, was good against the run. I mean, why aren't they extending his contract?
They love to be
why?
cagey with their players and kind of make them earn it. But yeah, I agree. I mean, this would be a great example to set. Yeah. Because this guy set a tone physically.
Right. Like if he plays well again this year, then he'll be a free agent. And then he'll be gone. He'll be too expensive, or he'll be even more expensive than you could get him for right now. That's the kind of thing Trent Baalke used to do. Sign the guy a little early. The Niners under Lynch really make you sweat it out, but I think it would be smart to lock him up. He's really good. Really good.
Really good. In every phase. He's good against the run. He's tough. He's played hurt.
He's gotten so much better every year too. He's 24.
Yeah. And he went, I talked to him in camp, I remember, and I said, you look a little heavier. And he's actually, I'm a little lighter. And I said, well, man, you reproportioned your body a little bit. And I said, what did you do this summer or this off season? And he's like, I hung out at the Mamba Institute down in Southern Cal and just worked and worked and worked and worked. So, tells you what he's about. He's a worker. He's a guy who wants to get better. You can give people a lot of things. You can't give them drive. If you don't have any real drive to get better,
I didn't know much about Diamador Lenore. He always seemed kind of like quiet and young but no, he's really serious.
He
talks a lot of crap too. Like he's very confident. He's developing his voice at a pretty young age. This is a guy that they should keep on their team. I'm surprised that they haven't re-signed him. Also, Hufanga, they could extend Hufanga's contract right now. And coming off a torn ACL, you could probably get him for a discount.
I don't know how they feel, but how do you think they feel about Hufanga?
I don't understand. I think the Niners like Hufanga. I think they like Lenore, but they're going to be spending a ton of money on Purdy pretty soon. They're going to be spending a ton of money on Ayuk pretty soon. The money is kind of shifting over to the offense, and it's always going to be on the defensive line. And once they have these extraordinarily large contracts, I think the Niners might feel like they can't spend big in the secondary. So it's possible that players such as Hufanga and Lenore could price themselves out of town.
Are the Niners, and this is one that, you get down to the draft. It's like sometimes, guys like ourselves who cover the team on a regular basis feel like we've got a real hand around, what they're doing and how they're thinking. And then a couple of years ago, we were all in that they're going to go for a safety, and they didn't draft any safeties. And so sometimes they invent, weaknesses. We have Robbie Gould. You know what? Screw Robbie Gould. He's old. We're going to invest a 3rd round pick on Jake Moody. We're going to invent a need that we didn't even have.
Right.
And they seem like they do that often. Is there, when you look at the Niner depth chart, do the Niners have any spot that you think they need a starter going into this draft? Because oftentimes it's like we can talk best player available, but man, if you feel like you have to come away with a starter, then it seems like teams kind of reach. And the only spot I was thinking of was either corner, or if they didn't feel like Ambry was a starter, or maybe linebacker with Greenlaw out, and maybe them thinking that Devondre Campbell is not worthy of being a starter. I don't know. Or maybe a spot on the offensive line. I like Brendel, but if you wanted to say we need to upgrade from Brendel to a starting caliber center, I could see that argument as well. Do you see any spot going into this draft where they absolutely, in your mind, need a starter?
I would like them to take a right tackle, but I got to give Colton McKivitz credit. Like, he's a starting right tackle, I guess. Even though he gave up the most sacks of the starting right tackles, he was a pretty good run blocker, I guess.
They like him. They
like him. So, okay. But I think they absolutely need a starter at linebacker. even if, like, let's say Dre Greenlaw misses half the year, I don't like the idea of Devondre Campbell playing 100% of the snaps.
I don't either.
I think he's a Sam linebacker. He's a third linebacker, some guy who's in the base defense, but you don't want him in the nickel defense. I don't think you want him playing all the time. So I think they need a linebacker too. And maybe it's Greenlaw when he comes back, but you don't know when that is. Maybe it's D Winters or Jalen Graham. Maybe not. I think they need a guy there. And then they've been looking real hard for guys in the secondary. They may not need a starter right now, but they're going to need a few starters in the secondary next year, and they may need to draft a year ahead of time because they don't like playing rookies anyway.
I think they need a linebacker. I think they absolutely need a linebacker because, I mean, you existed this year with two of the very, very best playing at an incredibly high level, and you still struggled to stop the run. Now you're going to improve your run D, and you're not going to have Greenlaw all year. That to me, that doesn't seem likely. I think they need a big time run stuffing inside linebacker. Doesn't have to be a big bodied guy, but I mean, because they sometimes, go for smaller guys. But I mean, they need a linebacker, no doubt in my mind.
Absolutely. Like last year, I felt Oren Burks was not a starting caliber linebacker. And it felt like the Niners had 10 starters on their defense. But the third linebacker, the third corner, whoever that 11th player was, just wasn't quite starting caliber at any point all season. So I still think they're kind of in that boat. They haven't improved at linebacker. Although I guess you could say if Greenlaw comes back full strength, that Campbell's an upgrade over Burks. So maybe that, but is Isaac Yadam like really an upgrade over Ambry? Like they're not even given the job to he has to compete for it. So it seems like you have a bunch of corners who are kind of right around the same level. They could absolutely use another corner. They could take that guy in round one, and they need a kick returner.
That's another starting spot. You're right, kick returner. Because they don't have a starting kick returner.
It's not like Debo's that good at it. He didn't really.
Well, and they don't want to use him there. He's
doing some big collisions on kick returns too.
Yeah, and I haven't mastered the new rule, but if it seems like there's room for a return man to have a significant role in this new rule, where you might have some big plays coming off your kick returns, and if you're not prepared for it, you give away the first year of the new rule because you didn't understand what a dynamic player you were going to need. That could be a net negative.
It's also like it's going to get returned 50 to 60% of the time. There's going to be fewer touchbacks.
Right.
And I wonder on those returns, what's the average line of gain going to be at the end of them? Like for the last, I feel like 10 years, it's been a given that offenses are going to start at least at the 25. Now, if you don't have a good returner, are you starting at the 17, the 16? Like, what's the downside of being weak at that spot? Curious.
Right. Well, I mean, and if it's a significant, if it's a significant role within the game, and you like, you know what, we'll see how it goes and we'll adjust to it in year two. You're giving away a major thing. I think the 49ers need to, especially after the Super Bowl, maybe dust up on the current rules and use them to your advantage as much as possible.
On the current rules.
Got to know those
That's
rules.
What Kyle should be doing right now. Reading the rule book.
Yeah, tricky. Maybe that's where he was instead of that being at the cocktail party.
Studying.
Man, I'm just seeing this. This is a shock to me. Novin Shafai says R.I.P. Vontae Davis, Vernon Davis's brother. Yeah, I'm just reading here. Vontae Davis, he died at the age of 35. Oh my God. What happened? The cause of death is not immediately known. Police in Florida said they were called to Davis's residence in Southwest Ranches, Florida. Very, very sad.
Vernon's little brother.
The old saying, "The good die young." This guy was drafted in the first round by the Dolphins.
Hell of a player.
Yeah. Very sad.
Vernon must be really upset. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, that's, there's football, then there's real life. That's real life. And R.I.P. to Vontae, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the Davis family for sure.
I always didn't he retire during a game?
Yeah, He
So
retired
I'd like to know
in.
what happened with him. And what was going on with Vontae? I don't know. That seems
I
really
don't know.
sad. Yeah.
I'm sure Vernon at some point would talk about that, but yeah, I mean, he retired
I
in
he was
game,
as
and
good as any corner in the league. He's a great athlete, just like his brother.
you sometimes you wonder though, Grant. I don't know how you feel about this, but sometimes you wonder when I see like multiple brothers, in the same family playing like a same pro sport. Vernon had eclectic interest. He loved to sculpt and paint and do all these things.
Yeah.
Do you wind up playing a violent sport just because you're pretty good at it and your brother played?
Yeah,
I
it's a good
think
question.
I think sometimes life does that to a lot of people where it's like, hey, I'm not really living my life. I'm living somebody
I
else's
know what you mean.
dream, you
It's like
know?
at 14, you watched your brother, go to Maryland, and you're like, well, if I want to be a millionaire, I could do this. I don't really want to do this, but I could do this and be a millionaire, or I could not. I don't know if that's Vontae's story, but I feel like
Sure.
a lot of players probably get into football because they made that business calculation at 14, and yeah.
Well, and here's the bottom line. You gotta love football. Football's pain and sacrifice and all kinds of things. You gotta love it. And I remember talking to Jeff Kent one time. He's like, "You think I love baseball? I don't love baseball." I'm like, "Jeff, I don't doubt it." But yeah, not everybody loves it. Some guys are just unbelievably. I mean, the rest of us are thinking like, "Wow, wouldn't it be amazing to be a professional athlete?" Some guys are just born with the athleticism to be a professional athlete, but they just wind up playing the sport because I don't know, their brother played it and their family kind of put them out there and they just kept progressing, but they never really loved it. And then all of a sudden, I mean, that seems to me if a guy retires in the middle of a game, that's almost
I don't
like,
know.
hey man, I've had doubts, but RIP to the Davis family.
R.I.P.
Very sad. Very sad. Lisette Ruiz has this one. She says, Super Bowl equals demote Kyle to offensive coordinator and hire a real head coach. 49ers look like modern day Buffalo Bills. Can't draft to save their ass. Don't know what an offensive line is.
Ooh,
Lisette, don't
Lisette,
hold back,
coming in
Lisette.
hot. Good stuff.
Coming in hot, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of us thought, I mean, coaching is one of those weird things where I was in the group of people that thought that Ken Dorsey was on the doorstep of like being the
Me
next
too.
great head coach.
Right.
And he got fired in the middle of this season.
And
And then
deserved to get fired.
the team played better after.
Better
So
without him. Yeah, he was really doing bad.
and he's an ex-Niner. We know him. Smart guy, local guy, great guy. Yeah,
Mirmani. Sorry.
Mirmani. But
Sorry.
I mean, great guy and a
Yeah.
smart coach, and I think a good coach. And I bet you anything that he's going to resurface. But it's just like one of those things where it's like, how good are any of these coaches? I don't know.
It just didn't seem like he was having any type of effect on Josh Allen. Like Josh Allen was making some incredible decisions under Ken Dorsey's watch. And also that viral video of him losing it after a loss didn't help.
Right, where he's up in the booth and he's just throwing everything.
It wasn't,
but I mean, come on,
it was a little over the top.
I know. Are the Niners on the verge of signing a veteran safety because they've got a Fonga, but he's coming off an ACL, right? They've got Jair Brown, but he's a rookie. Then Odom's a special teamer. He's a great special teamer, but he's a special teamer.
Mm.
And then there's Taylor Hawkins and Eric Harris, who are more like practice squad guys. I mean, I think when you look at safety, like the first glance, you're like, oh, yeah, they're set at safety. But then when you look closer, you're like, wait a second. Those guys are probably both strong safeties. They both play better in the box. I kind of think of Jair as kind of like the same as Gibson in that he can pick off an interception down the field, but is he a great cover guy? I don't see him as a great cover guy. What do you think? They talked about bringing in Simmons, and then they did bring in, was it Julian Blackman? Are the Niners going veteran safety pre-draft? Should they?
It does seem like they want to get faster at safety. Like you asked, are Hufanga and Brown the same player? I mean, neither one's fast. And I think they might want some speed at that position, considering they don't have a ton of speed on their defense. Like, where is it? So maybe. And I don't know if they're going to wait and see what they could potentially get in the draft and then double back to the free agent market after that. But they could always go get Deshaun Gibson again. But again, I think they want someone younger and faster. This is Nick Sorens's chance to put his imprint on the defense. He came from Seattle, where they ran cover 3 for a long time. Maybe the Niners are planning on putting more 8 guys in the box and running more cover 3 as opposed to split safety and just conceding the run. I don't know. But it's possible they need a different type of free safety.
Earl Thomas.
Yeah, someone like that. Someone who can really cover ground as a single high center fielder. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes you wonder, too. It's like all the talk around Hufanga. I know they like him, but he was injured a lot at USC, and he's been injured quite often with the 49ers. Maybe they feel like they can't depend on Hufanga.
And again, he has an all-pro on his resume. It's possible that the Niners are going to go kind of cheap in the secondary because they got to go cheap somewhere. It's not going to be quarterback pretty soon. It's not wide receiver. It's not running back. It's not tight end. It's not D-line. It's not linebacker. It's got to be somewhere.
The next one I want to ask you is more about your kind of sense of it. Because, I mean, it's all guesswork. I'm not expecting you to know. But if you were guessing, Grant, do you think is Lynch the key to the Niner personnel? Are their scouts the key to their personnel? They've had some success on day 3 of the draft. In fact, they just drafted Brock Purdy with the last pick in the draft. Somebody over there knows something. But now you got Adam Peters in Washington. You got Rand Carthon in Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? It's like you've got Martin Mayhew in Washington still. You've taken some of Lynch's lieutenants and you've kind of handpicked them and moved them around. And I noticed when they replaced Peters, they didn't really give either guy the title. Like they gave co-titles.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is Lynch? Is Peters? Is Carthon? Who's the key to the Niner personnel success? If you had to guess,
I think it's collaborative. I'm going to give up my best answer here. I think it's collaborative. I don't understand how much Adam Peters had to do. But Washington signed Cleveland Farrell. So clearly that was an Adam Peters guy. And clearly he had input to a degree. But I do think with the Niners, the coaches have big input. The coordinators, the position coaches. So I think you could see Brandon Staley's influence all over the personnel decisions. And Kyle Shanahan even talked about it. So did John Lynch in Orlando. They said one of the reasons they brought in Brandon Staley, one of the benefits already to having him was how big of an influence he had over their personnel acquisitions, Leonard Floyd in particular. Yeah. So I think Kyle has input. He asks, Bobby Turner has input, Chris Kasarik, Johnny Holland. Maybe that's what makes the Niners kind of unique. And I think maybe that's one of the things that John Lynch does well. He's kind of the opposite of Trent Baalke in that sense, because Trent Baalke was a scout. He would have his own opinion. He would trust his scouts, whereas John Lynch takes a consensus opinion and asks his coaches too, because he wants buy-in.
It makes this draft really interesting because we don't really know who was the guy. And it's like, if all of a sudden Washington has some amazing draft and the Niners the bed, then all of a sudden it's going to be like, well, maybe Peters was the guy. You know what I mean?
But it's not like the Niners' last 2 drafts have been that great. They got Jair Brown and Brock Purdy. Other than that, it's a bunch of wait and see. So, Adam Peters got a job. He was a guy. Maybe his influence or impact was overrated. Who knows?
Yeah. I thought they would make some big effort to retain him. I don't know if they did or didn't.
Maybe he wanted Drake Jackson.
That's right.
Sorry, Drake.
Yeah. And he was supposedly banging the table. He was the guy who was banging the table for Ambry Thomas.
Okay.
So maybe he's not the genius that we think.
Maybe not.
We'll find out. How about this one? Is the night and somebody was talking to me at Easter about this yesterday, and I had to think about it for a second. I'm like, you know what? That's actually a pretty good topic. The Niners had Chase Young and Armstead and Hargrave and Bosa, and it was a big name line.
Yeah,
they got pushed around. They got pushed around by Green Bay. They really got pushed around by Detroit. They circled the wagons on Super Bowl Sunday and fired a pretty good effort, but still fell short. We've already talked about Drake but they've made a number of changes. In is Leonard Floyd, in is Malik Collins, in is Jordan Elliott, in is Yatir Gross-Matos. if somebody said to you, is the 49er defensive line better right now than it was on Super Bowl Sunday? Or is it worse right now than it was on Super Bowl Sunday? What would you say?
That's a good question. To me, like, let's just break it down by position. Let's look at D end. I think it's absolutely an upgrade what they did at D end. I think the D end position last year was a joke. Other than Nick Bosa, they had Drake Jackson. I mean that their hope was Drake Jackson would be the guy, and when
Great
it wasn't,
week one and then evaporated.
Yeah, and then it was like, okay, well, let's pivot to Cleveland Farrell and Randy Gregory. Oh, let's trade a 3rd-round pick for half a season to Chase Young and watch him jog around the field. Like, they never really had the answer there or someone who really even fit the scheme. So Leonard Floyd and Yatir Gross-Matos, big upgrade. Big upgrade, I think. And then in the interior, like, it's tough to say that they upgraded getting rid of Eric Armstead. Like, if Eric Armstead is healthy in Jacksonville and play 17 games, and the Niners downgraded big time at defensive tackle. But Armstead has a chronic injury. Kinlaw has a chronic injury. Collins doesn't. Elliott doesn't. It's very likely the Niners upgraded at defensive tackle too. So I think they did upgrade on the defensive line.
I said yes as well, because I'm just saying availability. I mean, Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott are going to play. And Leonard Floyd, I think, is the best edge rusher they've had opposite Bosa, including D Ford. So I'm going to say it's an upgrade. But I'll tell you the one thing that bothered me last year, and I talked to him late in the year, was if Chris Kasarik is out there just screaming his head off, and yet he couldn't get those guys to play for him. And that was weird. I kind of thought of him as like, is he a great strategist? I don't know, but he's a killer. He drives these guys like crazy, and he's a killer motivator. If he's a killer motivator, wouldn't Chase Young have not been in a Cadillac jog? Wouldn't Kevin Givens have been playing hard? Those guys were Cadillacing it. Those guys were dogging it in the NFC Championship game. So what does that say? What does that say about Chris?
What does it say about Chris? Good question. What did it say about Steve Wilkes, who got fired? And what does it say about Kyle Shanahan? I mean, I think all of those three were responsible for the effort of their players. So I'll just throw that out there. Like, what about you, Kyle? Are you only responsible for your offensive players? Because the offense wasn't that great either. But yeah, Chris Kasarik, like, your one thing is supposed to be that you yell at players and you don't know. I mean, you don't ask them to do that much. They don't read and react. It's all about
get up the field,
getting off the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Playing hard. Yeah, that's it. And you can't get them to do that. Well, let's just say no one's gotten Chase Young to do that. So I'm not going to put that on Chris Kasarik right now. I don't really understand what the Saints were thinking when they signed Chase Young. Like, did you watch at all?
Yeah. I mean, it's that would be my one thing. If I talked to Chris this summer, I would be like, Chris, your guys were not going hard in the biggest game, in the second biggest game of your year. Why? I mean, just what, is why? That you? Are you going to own that? Should they own that? Does Kyle own that? Does Steve own that? I mean, that's worthy of a question, is it not?
It is. And Kyle's asked about it at the owners' meetings, and he keeps changing his tune. He's like, oh, we didn't have effort issues. It was just a couple plays. And yeah, we want our guys to play hard all the time, but social media just blew that up out of proportion. Like, no. You had effort issues. And the reason he said that is because a team that has effort issues, that's ultimately the head coach's responsibility. So instead of him being like, yeah, they don't really play for me like they used to, he's like, no, we play hard.
Don't give me the social media.
Social media.
So, I mean, is there any weaker answer than social media blew that up? Your guys were dogging in the NFC Championship game.
Your guys.
And not one guy. It's not like it was like, hey, a guy. It was multiple guys just kind of jogging around against Detroit. I mean,
we all saw it.
Unbelievable. They should have lost that game, and then that would have been
they really should have lost that game. I'm glad they didn't. I enjoyed covering Super Bowl.
I did,
and the way that they lost this one was just incredible. I mean, wow. I didn't get any pleasure out of it, but man, that was just unexpected.
They're inventing ways to lose it.
They really are.
Dreams24 says, would you be shocked if they draft no O-line?
No.
LOL.
Because they're trolls. They think
I would be shocked if they dropped no O-lineman.
They did it last year.
I know.
I mean, really, we all
still.
expect them to draft an offensive tackle this year. They signed Brandon Parker. Maybe that's their guy. Maybe that's their backup offensive tackle.
Oh my God. I've seen him. He can't play dead.
Okay.
Okay. He really, Brandon Parker, he's 6'8" with long arms. He's like looks like the kind of guy you wanted offensive tackle coming off the bus. And then the game starts.
Does he get pushed around? No anchor? Is that what we're talking? Sounds like a scheme fit for the 49ers at right tackle. Oh, he's 300 pounds and 295, 6'8", 295 and can't anchor. That's the Niners kind of guy.
I would say, he's this year's version of Matt Pryor.
Ooh, Matt Pryor was gigantic
and had some menacing tats. If you want menacing tats and a guy who's huge with long arms, Matt Pryor's your guy. Except then the game starts and nobody gets blocked, and
So you're saying Brandon Parker looks like a really good player, but isn't a good. You know who
Brandon
else is like a really good player?
Is central casting. Like if you're doing a movie about offensive tackles, you would definitely get Brandon Parker.
Spencer Burford is central casting. John Feliciano is not. You see John Feliciano in the locker room and on the practice field, you're like, no. That doesn't. His shirt's hanging out. He looks terrible, but he's a good player. Yeah.
Well, he's played a long time.
Get him off.
Some people. I keep maintaining to people that that's not an issue. Lynch agrees with me. He said it's not an issue, but he's kind of paid to say everything's not an issue.
What guard?
I'll ask you. Feliciano kind of, in defending McKivitz, kind of ripped Burford. And Coach and I went off on a deal about it where he thought it was the worst thing ever. I don't think it's that big of a deal. To me, I didn't take it as ripping Burford. I took it as supporting McKivitz. What do you think? They re-signed Feliciano and Lynch called him a hell of a guy. So he's a hell of a guy to Lynch. Is the Burford Feliciano whatever gonna fly into this year, or are these guys gonna get together at mini camp and it's no big deal?
I think it'll probably work it out. They're offensive linemen. I think they probably already worked it out. I didn't like what Feliciano did because no one asked him to set the record straight on social media. Again, to your point, like, dude, Burford knew. Everyone knew on your team. You didn't need to necessarily set the record straight for Coach Yak. But okay. I'm guessing, I know John Lynch. When there's a conflict, I was involved with one with Javon Kinlaw. The next day, me and Javon were in John's office, hashing it out. And we coexisted for 2 years after that. So knowing John Lynch, I'm sure they already did something like that. They worked it out. They said what they needed to say, and it's okay. I would imagine. That's the culture he's built there, and it's actually very effective.
Where are you with Burford? Because, when I talk to Burford, I'm like, wow, this guy's really smart. And then when I look at him, I'm like, this is the absolute ideal build for an offensive lineman. He's got long arms. He's carries tons of weight in his waist and in his thighs. He is absolutely exactly what you're looking for. Almost the physical prototype of an offensive lineman. And yet he did not progress this year. If anything, he went backwards. I thought he was almost better the year before. Where are you with Burford? What do you think happened there?
You know how old he is?
No.
Guess.
45. No.
23.
I was going to say like 24. But
he's 23. He'll be 24 in July. Sorry, I didn't mean to set you up. But what I'm saying is, to me, he's a guy who's switching positions. He was a left tackle moving to right guard. That's tough. He's 23. So he's a project. He really lacks functional strength. But if he gets it, he can be really good. Although we would say the same thing about Drake Jackson. He's kind of like the Drake Jackson of the offensive line. Like if either of those two guys gets a whole lot stronger, they could be good. I think I would put more of my money on Spencer Burford because I feel like technically he's pretty sound. Like he could be a really good pass protector. He could do all the movement stuff in the run game. He just needs to get stronger. Drake Jackson, I don't know that he actually has technique to be an edge rusher or an interior rusher. I don't really know what he does. Sorry. He wasn't even a good pass rusher in college. I don't really get the Drake Jackson thing. But Burford, I can see it.
Yeah, he played at Texas San Antonio. He played tackle. And it was a run-heavy scheme, but then they moved him to guard. But I just felt like they played him as a rookie, and I was like, wow, This guy's a 4th-round pick, and he's seeing the field, and man, it's impressive. And then this year, it's like seemed like when they did play him, they struggled, and he made mistakes. Should they, Grant, go best player available or draft for need on day 1 and day 2 of this draft next month?
I mean, you always want to go best player available. And it does seem like the Niners have filled enough of their needs where there's not something where they absolutely have to get that guy. Now, it is supposed to be like a historically talented and deep class of offensive tackles. It'd be a real shame if the Niners just passed on it entirely. They don't necessarily have to get that guy in round 1, but maybe round 2. But like, it's like if they don't get a linebacker, this is the end of the way. They could get a linebacker in round 3 for, who could contribute right away. So I think when you go need over best player available, that's when you take Mike McGlinchey over Derwin James and Minkah Fitzpatrick. You haven't had a first-round pick in 4 years. Don't take the best player available. If they had taken the best player available 3 years ago, they would have had Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase, like some future Hall of Famer. But instead, they got some guy they traded for a 4th-round pick. I forget his name.
I would copy Detroit. I mean, look at Detroit. Detroit keeps finding like players that they love and then just drafting them. So, I mean, when you do that, all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh yeah, we got, Laporta, a tight end, and we've got, this Georgia running back who's really, really tough to tackle, and Jahmyr Gibbs. And it just seems like they handpick, like Detroit's done a nice job at just going, hey, we want Jahmyr Gibbs. We don't care if we're overdrafting him. Hey, we want Sam Laporta. We don't care if it's in the 2nd round, and some people have him in the 3rd round.
But they weren't just filling needs. They really felt those guys were impact players and were right.
Right. Like, go find somebody that you love.
Yeah.
I mean, at any position. You did
with Ayuk. You traded up for Ayuk. You loved him. Great call. Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you one guy that I just think is phenomenal in this draft is Blake Corum, the Michigan running back. Now, I don't want to see them go running back, but I kind of see this kid as like almost like an Emmitt Smith. And if you could draft Emmitt Smith, wouldn't you do it? Even if you had a good running back. So I don't know.
I'm not against it really, because I think like the days of the Niners spending $14 million or $18 million a year on a running back are nearing the end. You have a franchise quarterback. You have a number 1 wide receiver. They're about the same age. Like, the days of investing all your money in the running game are over. You can get good running backs in the draft. You can go cheap at that position and still have a good running game. I think that the Christian McCaffrey era is actually coming to a close sooner than people think.
Really?
This could be the last year. He's got 2 years left on his deal. He's
how many touches did he get? What did he get for touches last year? I asked Shanahan early in the year. I'm like, dude, your running back's on pace for 400 touches. Are you cool with that? And he's like, well, we like to hand it to our running back, and then we like to throw it to him too. And it's like, okay, but do you want him to be around in 2 years? I mean, you're literally just driving this guy into the ground.
That's what they did. That's what his dad did with Terrell Davis. So it's kind of standard operating procedure. Sorry.
Okay, a couple last ones before we jet. Will the Niners trade for a top corner? Now, it's like I look at corner, Grant, and I say, you know what? There's been a lot of years where the Niners have had like 3 good corners, but not enough depth. But this year, if I look at their corners, I'm like, they got a bunch of guys who can play. I mean, Mooney Ward, Lenore, Ambry, and whether you like him or not, he's the NFL. Isaac Yadam is NFL. Luter, I thought, looks like a really exciting prospect as far as his size and speed. Womack, I think, has talent. Then they just signed Chase Lucas, who I think is more of a special teamer. But that's like 7 guys right there. Most teams keep 5. So they have a lot of depth at corner. But do they have that true number 1 that says, Ambry, you're sitting on the bench and you're a backup? And the only reason I bring this up is because, obviously Snead went for a 7th and a 3rd. Surtain is the 2nd is still supposedly out there. I don't know if they'll trade him, but it might be the year to go for him. And then Greg Newsome from the Browns is a really good corner. I loved him at Northwestern. He's out there, and he probably wouldn't even cost you that much. Should the Niners try to trade for a number 1 type corner?
I think corner is one of the more important positions on the field and one of the tougher positions to find quality players. There aren't a lot of great corners, and if you could find a shutdown one, go do it. Now, I don't think the 49ers will, because I don't think they value corner like we do. Like Kyle Shanahan wants to play zone. If you're that committed to zone and you really don't want to play man-to-man coverage unless you have to, then you're not going to invest highly in the cornerback position. Because once you start spending big money, trading high draft picks for a corner, that guy better be able to play high level man-to-man coverage in addition to zone coverage. And the Niners haven't really looked for corners like that. The closest they got is Travarius Ward, and they paid him a lot of money, but not the kind of money that Patrick Surtain would be able to command. I don't think they want to go expensive in their secondary. Prove me wrong, 49ers, but that's my guess, is that they're going to continue to sort of try to find cost-effective guys like they do on the offensive line.
Because of
maybe one
the
exception,
financial
right?
element.
There's like the Trent Williams and the Travarius Ward. There's like one highly paid player in those position groups at a time. That's it.
Yeah. No, I mean, to me, after watching McDuffie and Snead, I thought maybe they would learn their lesson and go, you know what? We can't have Ambry Thomas. We got to have a big time shutdown number one type guy who's like
the Chiefs don't spend on DBs either, right? Like they let Travarius Ward go, they let Snead go. They just draft the position and they don't miss. So be a good position to take in round 1 or 2.
No doubt.
Yeah.
All right. 2 last ones. Biggest draft bust. Now, some people would say this is an easy one. Biggest draft bust of the Shanahan Lynch era. But you know what?
It's not an easy one.
It's not an easy one.
No.
Because there's lots of options.
There's a bunch.
Right, here are the options. Trey Lance, Javon Kinlaw, Mike McGlinchey, Solomon Thomas.
Yeah.
Reuben Foster.
Mm-hmm.
Was Josh Garnett? No, I guess that was before them. So those are the guys, but that's even a lot. Reuben Foster, Solomon Thomas, Mike McGlinchey, Trey Lance, Javon Kinlaw. Biggest bust of the Lynch era. Lynch and Shanahan era. So Shanahan's on the top.
I still think it's premature to call Trey Lance a bust. Like we still don't really know what he's going to do, which could be nothing. But they traded 3 first-round picks for him to get nothing. So it could be him. It also could be Solomon Thomas. I mean, they spent the 3rd pick in the draft on him, just like Trey Lance. They traded down for him, but they took him over Patrick Mahomes, which is maybe the worst draft pick of all time. Although there are other people who got picked ahead of Mahomes as well. So you could go with either one. Those 2 are among the worst draft picks ever. Although, again, there is some bizarro world where Trey Lance becomes a solid player. Maybe.
I know people don't want to hear this, but I believe he's going to be good. Okay. I really do. Okay. I still have hope for him. I just think he's a unique player, unique prospect, unique development. Give him 2 years of playing, and I think why? Because it's not rocket science. This is not like, oh, you're never going to figure out how to play football. It's not that complicated. And he wants it. His family's a football family. He will put in the work. He's diligent. I say Trey still becomes something.
Still really young too.
I'm going to say
a lot of people wrote off Jordan Love before his 4th year in the season. So
that's a good call.
I would stay open-minded. Yeah.
I would say it's solid for sure, because it's not just, we talk about the quarterbacks, but didn't they also pass on Micah Parsons? Didn't they also pass on or was that?
When they took Trey Lance? Yeah.
Or no, I'm thinking in the draft where they actually took Solomon. Didn't they have like Marshawn Lattimore?
They took Solomon Thomas over Christian McCaffrey. How about that?
Yeah. That was it right there.
That was it.
And that was the one, that when they made the trade for Christian McCaffrey, that was Lynch in some ways trying to right that wrong.
Yeah, for sure. And what's crazy is, what's funny? You asked me earlier about who is picking the players, right? And I told you it's these coaches. Who is in New York right now with the Jets? Kinlaw and Solomon Thomas. Who wanted the Niners to draft those guys? I'm betting Robert Saleh banged the table for both of them. I bet you. Which means it's good for Kinlaw that he went to the Jets. Like, that's a coach who's invested in you, man. And will believe in you. Probably thinks you're better than you. Probably has a higher opinion of Kinlaw than Kinlaw has of Kinlaw. That's the exact kind of coach he needs.
Last one before we jet. the draft is coming up. It's officially April 1st, so we're now in draft season. Who is we talk a lot, but I don't know. I don't get the vibe from you as far as what's your mode draft season wise. I mean, by draft day, it seems like you got a pretty good handle on a lot of these guys. So obviously, you spend some time in April watching guys.
Yeah,
is
April
there anybody
now is the time?
Yeah, is there anybody that you've watched that you're like, you know what, shit, that guy's good? Because every day I'm in that mode right now, and I've got a couple guys. I already told you Blake Corum is
That's a good call.
I think Blake Corum is really a special player. But for me, the other guy is that there's a linebacker named Jamal Hill for Oregon, and he's a safety / linebacker. In his workout the other day, he ran 4.4, and he's a tackling machine. I mean, the guy is really to me it's a special player. He's a guy who's he's 6 feet 225. So he's is he a safety? Well, in the 80s he would have been, but now he's a linebacker. But he put up a 40-inch vert, a 4.440. That 4.440 would have been the second fastest time of any linebacker in Indy. He's a kid from Rex, Georgia, and I saw him a couple times this year. He made an incredible interception late in the year for the Ducks. I'm a big Jamal Hill fan. Is there anybody in the draft that you're like, you know what? I like that guy.
I've been saying this guy for a couple weeks. I'm locked into him as the first round pick, fully locked in. Cooper DeJean from Iowa. I like him. He's super versatile.
Or is he
a corner? It doesn't matter. That's the best thing about him. He could play a little corner. He could play nickel. He could play safety. I feel like the NFL is kind of evolving into like positionless football. Offensive players, skill players who could play a bunch of positions, defensive skill position players who could play a bunch of positions. He's like that. Also, he's a returner. He was the Big Ten return man of the year. He was the Big Ten DB of the year. He's a playmaker, like 3 touchdowns on defense last year or the year before. Yeah, I like him. He broke his fibula late in the season. He hasn't tested yet, but he looks like he's going to test off the charts. And a guy who'll be really good in zone coverage. Cooper DeJean.
And it's not DeJean, I don't believe. I think it's
No. None of that French stuff around here. DeJean. No. Remember Harbaugh used to get upset and would purposely mispronounce Ricky Jean-Francois' name? It's Ricky Jean.
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, it's Ricky Jean. Like I'm Haitian. What are you talking about? Like, no, we don't actually pronounce French things around here. It's soft. They lost.
That guy was 295. I was like, hey, I'll call you anything you want to be called. Yeah. Grant, what do you got cooking the rest of the day?
What I got cooking the rest of the day? Man, I'm done. I'm done strengthening for today. I'm gonna go work out in my garage. Get some sun.
What do you got down there? What do you got? A little Peloton, or you got a little Universal, or you free weights?
Man, I got the bare minimum. I got some free weights and a bench. So
play a little Survivor, Eye of the Tiger. you get any?
For you, I will today. Absolutely.
Get any music going down there?
Yeah, absolutely. Work out for 20 minutes and call it a day.
I was impressed with the number of pull-ups that you did that day. I was like, Jesus, this guy. I mean, I could probably pull myself up 4 or 5 times max, and you're just sitting there. Whoop, whoop,
Thank you. Well, I was at the time I was like 170 pounds. Over the last 6 months, I regret to inform that I've gained 15 pounds, and I just realized that yesterday. I don't know what I was thinking, so I have to get back in shape. 75 hard. Doing that, except not the hard 75 easy. That's what I'm doing. My way.
Get in there and lift. I'm hitting Little League. Hope everybody has a great day. For Grant, I'm Larry. That's it for us today. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Careful.